Hi guys, here's the problem I was trying to solve. I couldn't figure out how to sync Fusion objects like titles, intros, and outros to different music. Let's say I create a Fusion title, where the background fades in on the first beat, the title starts fading in on the second beat and finishes on the third beat, and the subtitle fades in slowly from beat 1 through beat 3 of the second measure, like this example. It's not the most impressive example, but it works. If I use this over a different song, the keyframes don't line up with the beats of the other song. This song is 79 beats per minute. And here's another one. This one's 138 beats per minute. It may look okay, but it's not the intended effect that I want. Sometimes it's close, but it's not always, and since I use music with different tempos, it can be really off sometimes. I wanted a way to create a Fusion clip where I could just type in the tempo of the song somewhere and have it sync up. I searched everywhere for weeks and didn't find anything. Finally, I figured out how to do it and thought I'd post a video in case any of you guys find this useful too. I started out by asking Casey Ferris if he had a solution, since I learned so much about Davinci Resolve from his videos, and he replied telling me that one way would be to convert the template to a compound clip and time stretch it. That got the old hamster wheel spinning in my head, and I finally figured out a solution that accomplished most of my goals. It takes a little bit of math while initially creating the Fusion object, but I created a spreadsheet to handle all of that. I'll go over this in a little bit more detail later, but there's a link in the description if you want to use this too. Now when I put these templates in the timeline, all I need to do is enter the tempo of the song and it syncs, as long as the frame rate the Fusion object was created in matches the frame rate of the timeline you're using it in. That's the only limitation. There are two workarounds for that. One is to create a version for each of the common frame rates you edit in. The other is to do more complicated math, and I set up the spreadsheet to handle that too. So here's the basics of how it works. First, we're going to create the Fusion object in a timeline that matches a frame rate we want to use this object in. I mostly edit in 23.976, so that's what I'm going to use. Next, we're going to sync the keyframes to 100 beats per minute using the spreadsheet to tell us what frames the beats fall on. And then we're going to save the Fusion object as a reusable and shareable object. When we use the object in the video, we'll add it to the timeline, syncing it to the first beat of a measure, and convert it to a compound clip. Finally, we'll change the speed by entering the BPM in the percent field and select stretch to fit. If the song is at 66 beats per second, we'll put in 66%, which is very easy to remember how to do. Now the keyframes in the template will sync up with the music. If we want text to fade in on the third beat, it'll fade in on the third beat, which is pretty neat. At least I think so. Now let's look at those other two songs again and see what happens when we sync them up to the time. Let me walk you through the whole process in a little more detail. Ideally, you'll start this in a new project, but I already have everything open here, so I'm just going to reuse this one. Let's create a new timeline, and let's call this 23.976 objects. Let's unclick project settings and go into format and change that. Well, we're already on 23.976, but change this to whatever frame rate you want to create your objects in. Again, it should be what you normally create your videos in. Right-click in an empty area of the media bin and select New Fusion Composition. Make sure the frame rate matches the frame rate of the timeline, 23.976 in this case. Let's change the duration to 15 seconds just so we have, well, let's make it 10 seconds just so we have something a little more to work with. And let's give this a name, just test title. And I think it's important to include the frame rate in here, just so we know where to use. In case we create other versions later, we know which one is which. So let's hit create. And where do we go? Test title 23.95. Let's open this in the Fusion page. And let's start building our our Fusion object. And I'm just going to make the same simple title I created before. We'll start with the background node. We'll make that white and connect it to media out. I'll add a merge node that we'll use later. And to fade this in, I'll add a brightness contrast node in here. So now is when we start using the spreadsheet. So we have a target beats per minute here, which is 100, and you don't want to change this because this is what makes the math easy. We're basing off of 100, so when we make the change in percent, we need to start from 100. Over here, we have our target frame rate, which is what we are planning to edit in. This is a simple calculation just to find out the seconds per beat. It's 60 divided by beats per minute. Next, we have to figure out how many frames per beat, and that's our seconds per beat times our frame rate. And in the case of 23.976, we get 14.3856. Here we have the computations that figure out which frame is on which beat. Beat 1 is frame 0. Beat 2 is frame 14. Beat 3 is frame 28. Beat 4 is frame 43. And we'll also have the upbeats as well. And I just go on for a few measures. If you need to extend this, you could extend this. But for me, I haven't really needed to do that yet. So if we want to start something on the third beat of the first measure, we'll do it on frame 28. If we want to start something on the second beat of the second measure, we'll do it on frame 71. Pretty simple, right? And now if, let's say you don't edit in 23.976, you edit in 30 frames per second. So that's every 18 frames, and the math is pretty simple there. Every beat is 18 frames, and the off beats, the half beat is 9. Do 29.97. Some of the numbers change a little bit, but they're pretty much the same. And let's say you normally edit in 60 frames per second, you could do that. 59.9. You get the point. So the first thing we need to do is animate the background fade. I want it to start coming in on the first beat and finish on the first upbeat. So it's going to start on frame 0 and the fade is going to stop on frame 7. Let's go into our brightness and contrast, and I'll go to frame 7. You can just type that in this box over here too, or you can just use your mouse, whichever one you feel comfortable with. And we're going to click over on this diamond to the right of brightness, and that's going to be our completed keyframe. I'm going to move over to 0, the 0 frame, which is our first beat, and we're going to add another keyframe there, and we're going to bring the brightness all the way down. So if we play that, that just fades our background in. Now we wanted to have some text too, so let me add in a text node, and I'm just going to and we'll set the color to very dark gray. And let's just increase the size a little bit. We wanted the title to start fading in on the second beat of the first measure and finish fading in on the third beat. Let's take a look at the spreadsheet again. So it's going to start on 28. Oops, no. So it's going to start on 14 and it's going to finish on 28. So let's go to 28 and let's go into our shading, opacity, and add a keyframe. And we said 14 is where we want to start. That's the second beat. We'll add another keyframe to opacity. Now we also wanted to add a subtitle. Let me add a new text node. And I'm kind of running through all this just because this isn't so much about how to create a title as it is the framing. There are much better videos out there about creating titles than this one, so look at those and just use this to help you figure out the timing. Alright, so let's type in subtext. subtitle of the above title is here. I don't know. Let's bring this down a little bit. Change the size. Alright, so there we have it. And now we want to animate this too. For this one, we want it to start fading on the first beat of the second measure, which is 57, and we want it to go a little longer. So we're going to finish it on the third beat of the second measure, which is 86. So it's going to finish at 86 and start at 57. So let's go to 86 right here. Like I said, you could just type it in here and that'll get you there. We'll go to shading and add a keyframe to opacity, and then we'll go to 57. Oops. 57, and add a keyframe for opacity here, and we'll bring this down to 0. Now obviously we don't have the music here, we don't have any of that here, so let's go back to our edit tab and let me throw in some music. This is a 100 beats per minute song I found on Envato Elements. By the way, I'm going to throw in a little plug here. I use Envato Elements to get music for some of the videos I make, and it's a great site. They have a lot of different choices. It's easy to get licenses. The fees are pretty small, and not only do you get access to the music, you get access to a bunch of different video templates and titles and callouts and intros and outros. And they also have a lot of stuff for Davinci Resolve too. So there's a link in the description. It's an affiliate link, so if you click on it, you don't pay any more. You don't save anything, but I make a little money. If you're happy with this video and you don't mind clicking on the link to join the site. I've been using it for a while. It's pretty good. Give it a try. I'll also include links directly to the songs I'm using here if you want to download this 100 beats per minute song, because it makes more sense to try to edit these over an actual song just instead of a click track or something like that. That way you could get a better sense of what it might feel like. So let's find the first beat of a measure somewhere here to put our clip in and have a look. So let's grab our title and put it right at that marker, and let's see what it sounds like. Okay, so now we're going to go and make this a reusable object. First step is to create a macro. So right click on your Fusion object and open in Fusion page. Select all the nodes except for media out. So actually before we do that, let's give these some proper names. Let's do title for the title, subtitle for the subtitle, and let's just change background 1 to background. And again, let's select everything except media out. Right click on one of the selected nodes, go up to macro and create macro. So we're in this crazy screen over here. This is where we get to select everything we get to edit in the inspector when we add this to a new video. Everything that's red in this list has something selected. And I guess right now I'm not really familiar with this, but I know some stuff gets added by default, and there's been issues with, editing it. So I just leave those as is because they're usually not things that you would edit. It's not like text or anything that you would want to change. So it doesn't seem to hurt anything to leave them in, but let's go in the things that we do want to change. And if anyone from Blackmagic is watching this, you really need to add a checkbox for each of these nodes in the tree, all these branches, so that I could click on color and select everything in color. And even if I don't want everything in color, usually I'll want most of them, and that way I could just select this and then uncheck the ones I don't want. Because right now this is a little annoying, so we have to click on type and all the different top right, bottom left, because this is this gives you different options. You can have different backgrounds. So we'll keep going. Do we need start and end? We don't need start and end. I think that's it for color. Next, let's go to our title and let's go to text. We want style text. By the way, just if you want an idea of what everything is, you could just click off onto one of these items here, and whichever one is highlighted, you'll see it here. So you can see what the different options are that you'll want to be able to change. Obviously, you'll want to change the actual text, and that's the style text is right here. You could change the font, title, color, green, size. I don't know, I just add a bunch of them just to be on the safe side. And let's see, scroll direction. We'll stop at emphasis. I think that should be enough for most situations. And now we'll do the same thing for subtitle. And we'll go to the text. Select the same things we selected for title. The color, the font features, orientation, all that stuff. Everything you might want to change to give it a different look in your title. Or if it's something where you're not going to change the text or anything, just, skip all this and just leave it as. Now we're going to hit close. And it's going to ask us, do we want to save the changes? And we're going to hit yes. Now, by default, it's going to bring us into Fusion macros here to save it. The easiest thing to do is to go into Fusion, scroll down to templates, and then go into edit, and we could go into titles, and we could save it here, and we could give it a name. Test synced title 23 dot setting, and hit save. Another way to reuse the object is to put it in a Drrfx file. The way you do that, and again, this is another thing I got from Casey Ferris, so apparently this can be tricky. So let's create a folder. I'm just in a temporary folder to do this in. So create it, edit, and then in that let's create another folder called titles. Now we can go into the titles folder and copy and paste the settings file we had created earlier. And let's go back here to our test folder. Okay, so now we're going to zip up this folder. I use 7-zip. Use whatever program you have just to create an archive here. Add to archive, and we're going to call it test sync 23 fps dot drfx. That's an important part. Okay, so now let's add this into Resolve, and Casey recommends creating a copy of this because sometimes Resolve apparently deletes this. So let's keep a copy just to be on the safe side. Let's go back into Resolve, go into our Fusion tab, back to our window, and let's drag and drop this into the nodes and see what happens. Now install, asks you if you want to install into the effects library. You click install. So let's go into edit, do sync over here, and we have both. So and they both look the same. One thing to keep in mind, this may not work if you don't have the right font, so you may want to let people know what font you used if you share this with other people, but that Drrx file you could just share with other people. And from what I understand, you could put multiple files in there. Let's pretend we're in a different project right now that uses the same frame rate. So let's create a new timeline and make sure we're at 23.976. General, okay. Our movie. Let's go make sure we're editing in there, and let's add a different song. Let's add the 138 beat per minute song in here. And we have other videos coming in here, and we want to add our title somewhere. So let's go into effects. And we can go into titles. So let's try and find our title. And it's right here. Okay, we have it now. Let's zoom out and just throw it in there. Try to find some measures here where we could add it. Zoom in, make sure we have that. Add that right here. Before we do anything else, I just want to show you that in this inspector here, when you select the title, you can now change different things. You can change, let's see, we can change the background color. Now let's give this very light yellow. We can even change the type of background from to some sort of gradient or horizontal, which will go from left to right, black, and we'll just choose another color just to give it a little bit of just a little bit of variation in the background. And we can change the title. This is my movie, or movie, whatever I was typing. We change the font color. See what that looks like in white. And we can also change the subtitle here. It is very good. You should watch it. Alright, and let's change that color. So we have our clip here. Let's listen to how it syncs up with the music so far. So that's not how we wanted it to flow. So let's change that. Right click on the title and select new compound clip, give it a name, title, compound, clip. And the reason we do that is because we can't change the clip speed of a title, but we can change the clip speed of a compound clip. So if we right click on that and select change clip speed, here is where we could go in and where it says speed %, whatever our beats per minute, whatever the tempo is of our song. And the nice thing about Envato Elements is for each song, it'll give you the tempo of the song in beats per minute. You can enter it right here. And this one was 138. So make sure you have stretch to fit selected and not maintain timing. And hit change. And now let's see what that sounds like. So that's exactly what we were looking for. And if the song was different, we can change it to something else. So that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. This is how I do it. If you have a better way of doing it, please let me know. Like I said, links for the spreadsheet are going to be in the description. Links for the music are also in the description. It's a pretty affordable subscription if you pay for a year if you want to buy it. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing with this channel. I'll probably throw up some equipment stuff, some software stuff, Lightroom, video editing, Photoshop, things like that. And if you're interested, if you like this, if you want to see what might be coming next in a month or two, or who knows, subscribe, and I'd really appreciate it.